This is the Mental Metal Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Metal Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Here we go, another episode of the Mental Metal Podcast where we dive into all things mental toughness in sports. I'm glad you're here. Grab your swimming trunks, jump on in. The water is warm and I am happy you're here. If this is your first episode, if you haven't been paying much attention, shame on you. You should go back and check out my earlier episodes, but just a little bit about myself and why I do this podcast. I'm a former educator. I spent over a decade teaching high school science, and then I was also a high school basketball coach and a junior high basketball coach, and got some experience with that. And I was an athletic director as well, so I have a lot of experience in athletics. But then I've also got experience now in the realm of mental toughness and athletics from the vantage point of I had to deal with my own mental health issues. In 2020, I had some pretty serious health issues that led to some mental issues, and I had to get some help in therapy. And then I started working with a coach, a performance coach, and and things like that. And I started learning a lot about positive psychology, so much so that I got my ICF certification and began my own business, Mental Metal Coaching, where most of my business now is focused on helping athletes overcome adversity, dealing with the pressures, the anxiety that come with athletics. I've worked with kids from young as 8 years old. I've worked with kids that are coach pitch baseball to some JFL stuff, up to junior high, where they really start to get a little bit more serious, and not everybody just gets to play. And then into high school, as things get a little bit more serious, and I've worked with so many athletes of so many ages and shapes and sizes and sports. I've gone from, the usuals, the more normal, like baseball, basketball, football. Then I got track and cross country and soccer, lacrosse, wrestling, golf, tennis. It's just about every sport you can imagine. And just that's what I do now, is I have multiple conversations every day, with athletes, talking about, and these are confidential conversations in which we're trying to help them gain their confidence, get over the pressure and the anxiety. So I have a really good insight and a really good perspective into the issues that kids are having these days. And of course, that is since the pandemic, and which affects things. It just does. And I think a lot of the research is saying that, the anxiety in athletics went up 1.5, 2 times during the pandemic. It really just exacerbated everything, but then it's never come down. The anxiety and the pressure is still there for whatever reason. There's a lot of things going on, and I don't really know why or how, but I know what we can do about it. So that's what I do now, is working with athletes and helping them do that. And that's how I got into this podcast, is because I wanted to help coaches better understand some of the things I'm learning, because I can't talk with every kid. But if I can talk to coaches, and the parents that listen, that how they can help their kids and their athletes. So that's why I do what I do. If you haven't been listening to the podcast, go back and check some out. There's some really good episodes there. I've talked to a lot of successful athletes from, gone into the junior high or high school into college. And then the same with the coaches, some successful high school coaches and college coaches. And I keep saying the word successful because it matters, especially when you have the conversations. I'm starting to figure out a strong correlation between success and the emphasis they put on mental health and mental toughness. It matters. And it's starting to see just a major difference I'm never disappointed. I always see when I talk to an athlete or a coach that's successful, it becomes readily apparent that they focus on mentality. It is part of their intentional plan. They work on it. They promote it. They foster it. It is something they work on. It is something they want to get better at. Just no difference than, hey, I want to get stronger. I want to get faster. I want to increase my vertical. I want to be a better shooter, build a better hitter, things like that. They have these practices they do to get better at it. They do the same thing with mentality. They really focus on it. And the higher you go in the levels, I just had an episode with Skylar Bolin. He's a pro athlete. He has a mental coach, right? I talk to the Division I programs, talk to their coaches, and they work with mental coaches, with sports psychologists, with psychiatrists. They work on with their kids because they know it is a competitive advantage. It's not all because they're having quote unquote problems. It's because they know it's a competitive advantage. You think about some of the really, really high level athletes in the past. The late great Kobe Bryant is a phenomenal example. He focused on mentality all the time. He was already one of the toughest guys out there mentally, and he still focused on it. He still worked on it. He wanted to get better at it. It wasn't because he thought he had problems. He just knew it made such a difference in his game. And I think that that's something that we need to focus on, especially talking about, some of the issues we're seeing coming out of the pandemic. I'm glad that it's starting to not be in a stigma to talk about it. So I think that I think it's a great thing. It's why I do this podcast, and I love talking to these successful athletes and coaches. And my guest today is no different. His name's Gavin Sullivan. He runs Mid Pro Academy, which is an AAU program, and a highly successful AAU program. They've done some really, really good things the last few years. And when in this conversation, you're going to hear him talk about a lot of the things that I already talk about just the mindset, the benefits. We're going to talk about the benefits of AAU and how to use that correctly, and the mindset that you need going into. And it's not just basketball. We're talking about these high level summer programs, and that could be AAU. That could be going to these football camps with really, really good players. There could be, club volleyball. Could be these, travel baseball programs that are really good. Are there downsides to those? Absolutely. And we're going to talk about that. But it's about knowing that it is useful for you if you use it correctly. So that's the episode today. So stick around. My host, Gavin Sullivan. It's a great interview, and I'll see you after the interview for a little breakdown. Educators and coaches, let's talk about professional development speakers for a moment. You know the drill. There's some good out there, but there's a lot of bad. I've been there, and I've felt your frustration. And that's why I've got something different for you. Professional development that's actually engaging and genuinely useful. As a certified coach and a former educator, I understand the struggles our students and athletes face. The pandemic's impact is real, but so is the potential for positive change. Mental Mettle Coaching has 2 presentations designed to help you tackle the social emotional challenges that schools are dealing with. First is for teachers of all ages and is called Live Your 100. This transformative journey draws from my own experiences overcoming hardship. This seminar equips you with the tools to assess mental states, conquer challenges, and infuse positivity into classrooms and to teams. Learn not to survive, but actually thrive. And the second presentation is specifically for coaches, those that tend to sit in the back and draw up plays during presentations. This presentation is called Forging Mental Metal in Athletes. It is not your typical PD. It's about actionable techniques. Empower your athletes to face adversity, develop growth mindsets, and break mental barriers that hold them back. I get it. The skepticism around PD is real, and that's why mental metal coaching stands out. My presentations are rooted in real world struggles, delivering strategies that you can apply right away. If it all sounds good, contact me, Coach Tillman, or send my information to your administration. Let them know that you want to see professional development that will actually make a difference. And here we go on the Mental Metal Podcast, talking all things AAU today with a friend of mine and a AAU coach, AAU program organizer in Gavin Sullivan. He runs Mid-Pro Academy, which if you follow AAU circles, have been doing really well. And I just what I really want to talk about here is just that AAU has a I don't want to say stigma, but some people look at it positively. Some people look at it negatively. I think there's good things. And I've had kids that played AAU, and I know that there's positives and negatives. And I just want to tease some of that because I know Gavin runs a really good program that's very successful, but also tries to do things the right way. And I want to get his take on, what should be the goal of a AAU program from a success standpoint for the athletes, for the program. And also, since this podcast is for coaches, and I know a lot of the listeners are high school coaches, and some of them don't like the way AAU runs and things like that. But I'd like them to know, here's what you can get out of it from your kid. I would love to get some of that perspective because, again, it was a really good program or a really good situation for my son to do some stuff in AAU. And so I think there's a lot of positive there, but you do have to know how to tease out what's positive, and you really have to go into it with the right mindset as a player, as a coach, as a parent, honestly. So Gavin, thanks for being on, and just give me a little bit of rundown about your basketball background and the Mid-Pro Academy.
Yeah, basketball has been a part of my life since I was a toddler. Honestly, I grew up around Naperville, Illinois, and my dad is an alumni. He played football at North Central Division III, and it was kind of in our backyard, So we went to a lot of the football games. We went to a lot of the basketball games. My family was pretty close with the basketball coach at the time at North Central, and he let us come to practices. He let us come to, games and, be on the sideline, be on the bench, with them. And it just kind of, exploded my love for the game, to be around college basketball players, at such a young age, and to see what they had to do. And then my dad, just as kind of a hobby, he had a CDL, and he ended up driving the bus, for him some of the time. So I got to sit on the bus with the players, and they'd interact with me on away games. And my dad did it because he liked basketball, and so did I. And it just honestly grew. Junior high school, I ended up playing Division III myself at Loras College out in Dubuque, Iowa, and really enjoyed my time out there. Loved the campus, loved the school, loved my teammates. I always thought I was going to play at a higher level, but once you get to college basketball, you realize that all levels are talented, and I wouldn't trade my experience for anything for it. So,
hey, I'm a D3 player myself, and I think a lot of times kids go to that D3 level and be like, oh, I'm better than this, and then about the first year there, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not better than this. This is really, really good basketball, and you're talking about the CCIW there with the North Central, and I know you've got some players that have gone there. It's anywhere you go to play college, you're gonna have to you're gonna have to fight for your spot. No
No
doubt about
doubt.
it.
No doubt about that. And that,
Yeah,
just to kind of go off what you were saying, like that's the biggest thing that kids nowadays don't realize is that, you know, everybody perks you up on social media or around your area. We didn't have that when we were growing up,
right.
that outside of the newspaper.
Yeah,
But, once you get to college, everybody can play.
yeah. No, I remember having to splice game film together to make a VCR tape and I would send copies to some coaches that I was like, I'd like to play for. And
Hmm.
that's how we did it back then. And that's just to think about that. That's crazy, isn't it?
Right.
Just the difference. But yeah, so tell me about mid pro and how you got that going. I know your love for basketball, but how'd you decide to get into the AAU and running that program?
I got down to Central. I dated a girl throughout college who was from Peoria area, and one summer I came down here with her and stayed with her family. And she had a little brother who played locally in like AYBT tournaments, like small,
Mm-hmm.
kind of local travel. Um, and her dad told me that they didn't lose a game the year before, and they were steamrolling everybody again the year that I was down there. And we kind of talked about, I didn't even know what AYBT was, but AAU was, quote unquote, the thing up by in the burbs and in the city, a little bit farther travel, all that stuff. So he decided to create a program called the Peoria Irish, and put a team together for his son, and I kind of helped out, and it just kind of steadily grew. In 2015, I think we started in 2005. Um, and then 2015, I took it completely over and changed it to the Illinois Irish. And then 2019, the summer of 2019, behind the scenes, we were um, merged with Quad City Elite, who had been around for about 10 years. We had been around for about 15 total, and created Mid Pro. But the first year of actual Mid Pro teams was the 2021 class, which would be the 2020 summer, spring and
Okay.
summer, but that was COVID. So now nobody really got to see what Mid Pro was about that year. We played in maybe 3 or 4 tournaments in August and September. I think there's only like 1 or 2 parents were allowed, like all the
Yeah.
restrictions on it. And then the next year, 2021, we actually got to, which was Lane's age,
Yep.
going into his senior year, was the first time people got to see what mid pro was, and what we were about and what we had coming. And it's just kind of taken off from there. There's been a lot of years of building to it with us and Quad City Elite prior to mid pro. And we had joked around forever about what happened if we merged and what could it be. And it boom, it exploded pretty fast. So
When you think about when you've only done the mid pro name now for a year or two, you've really, I'm sure some people feel like it's just happened overnight, but it clearly not. But you guys have made a lot of noise in the AAU circles in the last just 2 years. So, and a lot of that was with one class that you was just turned out to be just phenomenal. But how many teams? So the mid pro academy, how many teams you got that you run
uh,
each year?
this year we had, let's see, we had about just under 20, maybe like 18 boys teams. And I think we had around the same number of girls teams, 15 to 18, right in there. We brought in a new group out of Edwardsville. Ball Hog Academy is their junior high level, but now their girls and their boys at their high school levels have turned into our mid pro South teams. So it's growing. We love having them. It's a great addition to us. They fit our culture. They fit what we do. They fit what we want our focus to be about. And it's been a great collab with them for the last 2 years. And every time I think we're big enough, we get bigger. It's a good problem to have, but there's for every thing you add more on the logistics side of things too.
So I would tell you that one of the things I most appreciate about Mid Pro Academy is that your name is Mid Pro Academy and not something like Ball Hog Academy,
Yeah.
or I mean, the AAU world is just there's some crazy names out there that are just thrown together that have this. I don't know. It seems to lessen it a little bit sometimes to me.
Yeah, you got to laugh at some of it.
Yeah,
It's a name. I mean,
yeah,
you look at some of the baseball, minor league names, and you just kind
yeah,
of go, "What are we
yeah.
doing?"
What?
So
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it to each their own. Like Ball Hog. Obviously, Brandon Hogg is the guy that runs it, and it was
Okay,
just
well then that's
it was just an easy thing, and it's got a great logo to it. So I actually don't mind that one, but I know what you're
yeah.
saying. Like, there's whatever.
Uh,
There's some
uh,
crazy ones out there for sure.
yeah, there are. So what would you say is mid pros like? What is your vision? Like, what do you hope to get out of this? What's your vision for AAU or the program?
The vision for our program is development. I'll never say anything different. You're always going to have your naysayers of, oh, how much can you develop kids in one practice a week, and just playing games, and a lot. I can say, I mean, I can go down the list of players. I could go down the list of parents that would speak up for it. It's just a different type of development. Hey, your son came from a smaller community, playing 1A and 2A schedule for the most part. And then he's really good and he makes a team, and he comes out here and he finds out that he's just another fish in the pond. And there's nothing wrong with that, but he's never been that guy, and that's part of his development was, okay, it's harder for me to do things out here. How do I still affect the game in ways that I know how? Okay, I'm an extremely good shooter. I'm strong. Okay, but we talked about it at the time. Defensively, he was lacking because he didn't see the speed and athleticism at D-max level that we're seeing. Well, it took him a while to get adjusted. Well, it takes every kid a while, whether they're really elite or not. They have to adjust to everybody being fast, everybody being able to shoot, everybody being able to do something. So our vision is, hey, we want wherever you come to us and you start off at, we're going to try to make you better, whether it be IQ wise of how to make reads and what to look for, the speed of your shot, the speed of your defensive abilities, the toughness that you have rebounding, or physicality throughout the game. I can break down a million different parts, but that's what the purpose of this program is no matter what level you are, we want you to be better when you leave.
I think that, and I agree with all of that, because I think that when you're talking about development, we're talking about one of the first steps of development is awareness. And if you are in a gym where you just, well, it's like you talk about that AIBT team that steamrolled everybody. They really weren't getting any better. You have, at times you got, I mean, failure has to be part of success. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not experiencing much failure, then you're really not getting much better. So I would agree. I think that even if, like I said, even if it's just awareness, I think is a big part of it. Uh, so tell me a little bit. You talked about, you've got different players and how good players are. Give me, I mean, I know you love this part. Give me a rundown of some of the players that have played for you for either mid pro or with the Irish, who's been in the program. Just, name drop a little bit
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Some names that might ring a bell. I'll just kind of go top to bottom. Uh, Alec Peters was from Washington High School. He graduated in 2013. He was drafted by the Phoenix Suns in the second round in the 2017 draft. And now he's making a killing overseas in the EuroLeague, having a great professional career. Um, Isaiah Roby played with Quad City Elite, the group that we merged with to create Mid Pro. He was drafted in 2019 by the Dallas Mavericks in the second round. He's still in the NBA right now with the New York Knicks. You got Ethan Happ, who was a Big Ten legend. He's playing overseas at a really high level. Been in the EuroLeague, been at super high levels in other countries as well. DJ Carton is one that's kind of blown up recently. He's with the Iowa Wolves in the G League right now, but he was a top 50 recruit in the country. Got to go to the U.S.A. training camp and all that stuff. And then you have, recent guys, Hair Jordan. Everybody wants to talk about Ethan Kaiser. That's my guy. But him going to South Alabama, you have Brock Harding and Owen Freeman, who, just won state for Moline and 4A, and now we're at Iowa. So we've had a million other guys outside those guys too, that have had success. But those are guys, kind of towards the top, that have done some things, pretty recently.
And that's the thing is you're talking about you wanting to develop players, and I love that you say that's first and foremost, but AAU still is a lot about that exposure and trying to get those scholarships, and AAU really loves to. That's really what it's put together.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening to this, you're not really familiar with it. I didn't realize, like I said, I finally started going to the bigger ones with Lane, my son, and I'm like, oh, hey, there's you just look at who's watching there and you're like, okay, this is as much for those college coaches as it is for anything else, because this is their chance to be able to come and watch players because they're busy during the winter. So it's definitely about that exposure. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I really want to start getting into what sort of mindset does a player need to have coming into AAU? Because you mentioned, and you mentioned my son about having to find out that, okay, wait, I'm just just a fish in this big pond. But you have to, not every kid is okay with that, and they struggle with it, and you have to have the right mindset going into it. So we'll take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll dive into that topic. The Mental Metal Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. Less than 1% of high school athletes ever become professional athletes. But as parents, we invest in their athletic pursuits because we know it's worth it. Sports build vital life skills. Confidence, perseverance, and the joy they bring are invaluable lessons from sports. But what if your athlete is facing the other side? What if anxiety, apathy, and sorrow have replaced the joy? Well, I can help. My name is Matt Toman, and I am a certified mental coach. And I understand the challenges young athletes face. I've seen mental coaching transform the mindset of many young athletes. It's not about turning them into pros, but nurturing their inner strength for sports and for life. At Mental Metal Coaching, we offer virtual sessions to help them tackle challenges, build confidence, and rediscover the joy of sports. Every young athlete deserves to thrive. Mental Metal Coaching, facing adversity with a smile. Welcome back here on the Mental Metal Podcast with my guest, Gavin Sullivan, the director of Mid-Pro Academy, an AAU basketball team in Central Illinois. And what we're diving into now is I want to talk about that mindset of there's a lot of competition in AAU. The kids are out there to get a scholarship and exposure, and that's all a big part of it. But you're going to get knocked down some, and there's still development that needs to happen. So what sort of mindset do you see a player need to have to be successful at the AAU game?
It's hard to lump it into one, thing. I think every kid is a little different. High school coaching, any coaching, I guess, in general, you kind of gotta probe each individual, hey, I'll talk about Brock Harding. You know, there's a lot of similarities between my mindset and Brock's mindset. We're both smaller dudes that were, underrated, undervalued, whatever you want to say, for a long time. Brock is extremely way more better than I ever was.
I get.
Like so. But the things that we faced were very similar, and both of us just kind of had a attitude where we didn't care. You can say it, just watch. And not every kid is built like that. A lot of kids, are compassionate kids. There's nothing wrong with that. That it sticks to them a little bit different. They hear a negative, and I mean, man, it grabs a hold of them, and they kind of fumble into it. So, the mindset that they got to have is they got to be hardened. I'm from the old school. I went through it. I think nowadays there's some different things, social media and different aspects that kind of come play into the, mental makeup of players that we didn't really have to go through. But at the same time, I think we protect kids from adversity more. And so when they actually can't be protected from it, it hits them 10 times harder. Adversity in anything, you're going to have to go through it. You're going to hit a wall to where you weren't good enough today, or you're not good enough right now. Well, mom and dad aren't going to save you. Coach isn't going to save you. You got to be better, and I think that mental makeup is, it's kind of a roundabout way to answer it, but each individual you're going to have to break down how he handles things and what he needs, to kind of get to that next hump. But, AAU in general, for most kids, it's eye-opening experience. They're going to get humble pie at some point during the season, and it's how you're going to help them handle that, because most of them haven't hit that level of humble pie before.
Yeah, they come from there. Even some of the bigger schools,
Mm-hmm.
they're the best player on their team, and you know you come into that conference center, and everybody there is really really good. You're playing these Nike funded and teams that are these guys are good. That humble pie that gets served up every summer, which is like you and I say, it's a good thing for them. But how do you help them? Let them know that is good for them, because they don't exactly enjoy the taste of it at first.
I mean, luckily for us, we have things to show them now. We have an alumni base. I can use extremely good guys. I can use guys that are at their level if they're lower than the NBA guys. But like, hey, we have such a broad spectrum of guys that went through the same thing that it kind of levels them out a little bit. Like, hey, I'm not that bad. Like, hey, this guy is really good, and he went through some of the same things I went through. So experience, relatable people to their area, to themselves, to the game, that they can kind of entrench themselves with, to have those similar, downfalls or, hurdles that they got to get over. I think goes a long way with kids, honestly.
I think so. I think that having that experience and seeing it, you're being able to put it together and saying, hey, this, a kid like, you see Ethan Happ and be like, hey, this kid had to go through it. Or now you got, like you said, this last year with Brock and those guys and kids going to Iowa and stuff. I mean, did you see like take a kid like Brock, who was smaller, but he's at Iowa and with Owen there. And did you see them go through this as well as they went through the AAU stuff?
Uh, you know, Brock was a little different. I'll compare the two because they are very
Okay.
different kids. Brock is an alpha among alphas. He does not
Mm-hmm.
care. Like, you cannot tell him that he can't do something, because he will make it a point to prove to you. It motivates him, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
He is a kid that eats the negative and spits it out into a positive.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible to watch. I thought there would be some more. Having him for 3 years, I thought there'd be some more hurdles that we had to jump through. Just because of where he wanted to get to and what people were saying. Never. He just put in a ton of work, and I also think that's a big thing for him is that he trusts his work. He's in the gym at 5 o'clock every day in the morning. Did it all throughout high school. I've heard they've had to kick him out the gym at Iowa. He's in there too much. So they had to slow him down a little bit. But that's his preparation prepares him for those moments. Owen is an unbelievably talented kid, super awesome individual, great person. We had to kind of bring an alpha mindset into him. We had to make him understand how people were going to attack him. That
Right.
not everybody's there to be your friend and give you the nice write up. And, once he started getting all the Big Ten offers and, become a national recruit, guys started playing him different. Guys started looking at him like shark bait because they wanted his spot, and I put a picture of both of them up yesterday on Twitter, and it says, "Without rain, there is no flowers." And I'm talking to both of them, and the picture with Owen is I'm chest to chest with him, and that happened in Atlanta, his 16 year. So Lane was around for it, and I'm out on the court chest to chest with him, screaming alpha mode, and that summer right there is where he kind of flipped his mindset and became that, and he's just taken off ever since. So one had it in him his whole time, and one was just a really talented big kid that loved playing the game, but he didn't know how people were going to attack him. Where Brock's been attacked his whole life because he's small, and he, you think you can pick on him, and stuff. Where Owen, once he made that switch, he's been he was a bad man before, but he's a different level of bad now. So
Right. And well, let's be honest, coach. The chest to chest is being a bit generous, right?
right, right,
Chest to torso, maybe
yeah,
something like.
let's
Oh
be real
yeah.
about that. Yeah, yeah,
No, I think it's great to put that not every kid comes in, and we already know that as coaches, as humans, we know not every kid comes in the same, and they
mm-hmm.
have their own internal struggles that they have to deal with, and the fact that you have to recognize that, and because you are helping them. I mean, I watched them both play in high school, and until you get to the state tournament stuff was kind of easy for them at times. Those two,
Mm-hmm.
but you see more of the adversity maybe than their high school coaches. So the fact that you're not just saying, "Oh, just go out there and beat notice," you're actually working on their deficiencies and helping their mindset is what I liked about the program. I want to talk a little bit about, I know that we're talking about some of your upper teams,
Mm-hmm.
but you have other teams too.
Mm-hmm.
You have like I know for like the oldest age, you have your elite team, but then you had like is it an East and a West? Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. Honest to God, we just needed names to separate
Yeah.
them. We could have gone black, white, silver for our colors. We picked east, west, south. North if we need
Right.
it. So those guys we treat the same way. We take them to all the same tournaments for the most part. They're in part of the association of the league that we play in, so they're gonna play some teams that we play. They're gonna play teams that are released in the association, maybe more to their level, but if they keep winning, they're going to get better games. If they keep losing, they're going to get the bottom half of the league. But I don't think it does any kid any service if you change the way you coach or you approach just because they're on a different team. We want now my style might be different than your style. That's one thing, but the message is going to be the same, all throughout our whole entire program. The big, I'll give you an example this year. We knew we were going to have a target on our chest this year because of what the 23 class did across the country the last couple years. Everybody wanted to get us back. Everybody, we were a lot of people's, circled game on their schedule. And I don't think a lot of our kids understood what was coming. So we made it a point at the beginning of the year to make practice there's only two types of things you could be: pit bulls or poodles. And you can't be anything in between. You can't bite like a pit bull for a play and then turn back into a poodle. You're just a poodle that bit hard one play.
Yeah.
And so we taught, we said that from our 17 top team to our 17, whatever you want to say, third, fourth team, all the way down to our fifth grade team. And I think when a staff or when a program pushes it throughout the program, it starts to bleed through the program. And I thought by the end of the year, all of our teams had that mindset, that tenacity that was needed. So, for each team, I don't want there to be a difference in philosophy of what the program is about and what we're trying to teach. The difference is, what level can the kids get to? Hey, Brock and Owen, hey, they were high major, they're Division I guys. Owen got him as a freshman.
Yeah.
Brock got him right at the beginning of his sophomore year. So they're at that level. Well, our second or third team, and I'm not saying you can't be to Division I, but we want to get you to whatever level at the highest that we can prepare you for. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Like, you have these high major D1 guys in your program, but most of the kids in your program end up at the the D3 level.
yeah, I would
Probably
say, yeah,
most of them.
yeah. I mean,
Uh,
like, you got to think, most years we have about 30 prospects that come out of a class, and in a great year, seven, 7, 8 go D2 or higher, D2 or D1. So the majority of them end up at a D3, NAIA, JUCO, school. Nothing wrong with that, but that you are what you are, until you prove otherwise, you are what you are. Just like me. I went to D3. I thought I was going to North
I,
Carolina my whole life,
yeah,
and it didn't happen. But like, you just end up seeing what it takes, or, what
yeah.
separates eventually, could be size, could be athleticism, could be length, could be work ethic, skill, but there's just a lot of things. I tell parents, I tell players this all the time. People want to compare two prospects all the time, apple to an apple. It never is. Even if they play the same position, I said it's an apple to an orange. What you do well versus what he does well are two totally different things. He might be a little bit longer. You might be a little bit taller. He might be a little bit more athletic. You might be a little bit more skilled. So it's not an apple to an apple anymore. It's an apple to an orange. So that's, kind of a way to look at your teams too. Every team is a little bit different of how you can coach them. Hey, I could take that 23 team and ride them into the ground, and they loved it. Some other teams you can't do that with. You got to kind of, help them along a little bit, and not baby them, but be a little bit more aware of who they are at the moment. And I think that's, a way to make the whole better than just doing it to individuals, if that makes sense.
It does, and I love what you're saying about not comparing prospects, because I think kids and parents get into that a whole lot. Well, I'm better to this kid. I'm better than that, and it's just it isn't. It's not apples to apples, and the hard part for some people to accept is, in all these differences within a player, some of them are things you can change and some you are not. Like, there is a huge there's a genetic makeup to it that is you just can't
Mm-hmm.
overcome that. Sometimes you just can't. But you can adjust your mindset and change your work ethic, and you can make yourself better. And that's extremely important. That's life. That's what we need to all get better at. But that's a really good, I love the way you put that. And I love that even though it's hard not to compare, because everybody's there watching, comparing. You got coaches on the side taking notes. It's hard not to compare. That's what they're doing. So it is, to have that mindset going into it is really good. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I know you may not tell stories, but you're going to get the gist. I want to talk about I want to talk about parents and how they
Mhm.
need to go and look into AAU and what they need to plan, uh, some of the pitfalls, some of the complaints, and just if you're going to do AAU as a parent and want your kid doing it all the way from fifth grade, because you go all the way down to fifth.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we want to talk about to those parents what mindset does a parent need to have for this. So let's take a break and we will come right back. Coaches, empower your athletes to overcome adversity with the Mental Mettle Academy. Teach them to face and conquer hardship without adding extra pressure. Visit the link in the show notes and enter the code METTLE, that's METTLE, at checkout for a special listener discount. The Mental Mettle Podcast is brought to you by our friends at Quick Cut. Quick Cut is the new alternative to Huddle. It's no secret why Quick Cut is the fastest growing platform in the country. Their video analysis platform has everything you need. Plus, you'll get triple the storage at about half the price. And now get even more when you use the promo code 50hours for 50 hours of free video storage. Make the switch. You'll be glad you did. Visit quickcut.com today. Welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Once again, here with my host, Gavin Sullivan, the director for Mid Pro Academy, a AAU basketball program for boys and girls from fifth grade up through high school. And AAU has, as we talked about a little bit, it is I've talked to I don't know if you've listened to much on the podcast before, but I've talked to I had Chris Lowry on from Northwestern, and we talked about AAU, and he said I asked what is he looking for in AAU, and he's like, we already know a lot about the kids. I just show up to people watch. He's like, I want to see the kid interact with his coach. I want to see the parents interact, because he's like, we put a lot of money into a kid, and we kind of want to know what we're getting into that. And I don't think people understand that sometimes. So I want to get some stories, some examples, some do's, some don'ts from the parent side of things getting into AAU.
Yeah, I think every parent comes into it with the right mindset, honest to God. I think they all want, every kid to succeed, and want their own kid to succeed. But as you get older, it becomes harder and harder as opportunities are given to some and not others, and kids separate themselves. It's I think it's natural, to be honest with you. But I think there are, luckily, I will say this, we have we're pretty blessed because our parents, for the most part, stay out of the way. I would say we have very, very, very minimal parent problems every year compared to all the other
Right.
programs that I talk to. So I feel extremely blessed about that, but I think we also set a tone right away, with the approach. We want our parents to be, love your kid, love your kid. Let us coach them. We're not going to do anything to hurt them. We're going to try to build them the way we know how. Here's our track record. Here's all the kids that we put in college. We know what we're doing. Whether that be a fifth grade parent or a 17 and under parent, you don't go to your doctor and say, hey, I need my knee surgically repaired. But then you question why he's repairing it that way, even though he's a specialist in knee repairs.
I think people do that, just so
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, and
You shouldn't.
they're specialists,
Right. Yeah.
and I think you kind of hit the head on CeeLo, with Coach Lowry. He's been in the game a long time. He knows what he's doing as far as recruits. He wants to know what's on the back end of that. Is
Mm-hmm.
mom and dad going to call him every day? Are they going to be helicopter parents that need to know everything all the time? Or are you going to let your 18-year-old, 19, 20-year-old kid grow up? And I think, I do think it has changed a little bit, even during my time, that parents are a little bit more involved, in the sense of wanting to know everything or wanting to put all this information out on their kid or reposting things, like whatever it is on social media. You just got to realize that other people are watching you move, not just your son. You can help it and you can hurt it. And it's always hard to tell parents you messed it up, because they'll be quick to tell me, no, it was you. Well, here's a text. Here's a college coach telling me that you're crazy, and so it's one of those things as a parent that you have to be okay with your kid being uncomfortable at times, and I think that's hard as a parent, is watching their kids struggle or watching their kid not have the same success with us or at our level as they do in, high school ball or junior high basketball where they're from, like we talked about before. I mean, shoot, hey, Lane could score 40 at DMAC, and I don't think he could have scored 40 for us, even if we gave him the ball every single time down the court. And that's not a knock on Lane. That's just the level of competition is so much harder,
Really.
And I think sometimes that they try to compare. Hey, this is what he's doing at DMAC, or this is what he's doing at Moline. Well, that doesn't mean anything out here, And as a parent, you have to be able to separate the two, and just understand that there's a process to it. Everybody says it's on my shirt. Trust the process, and some parents do a really good job of it. Some parents need to know everything all the time, and don't trust it to just, hey, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. There's gonna be peaks. There's gonna be valleys. You have to be able to go through both, and so,
Yeah, CeeLo said that to me. He said, "Trust the process, but the process is hard."
yeah,
And that's
exactly,
and
yeah.
that's and that's what people like. It sounds easy on a T-shirt. It really
Mm-hmm.
does, but
Mm-hmm.
it's hard.
Oh,
It's going to be yeah.
for sure. And the more success you have, the more the expectations come from the outside, and expectations are a tough thing to deal with, because hey, it's easy. Like I said, and I keep bringing up Lane just because Lane's your son, but like,
Yeah.
it's easy for him to live up to that at DMAC. He's big, he's strong, he's skilled, he's a Division II college basketball player. But okay, now you got to live up to it at UIS. Okay,
Yeah.
can you get 10 points a game? Well, yeah, I think I can, until you're out there. Like, then you got to trust the process of all the work that you've put in. Does it translate now? What you have done at one spot doesn't mean it translates to the next spot. And I think, kids go through it, and I think parents go through it because they've seen them have success, and basketball is the same sport, but they don't separate the talent, of each area of it.
Matters, and I think that a lot of the parent stuff, because we've all been guilty of it, it's the ego is really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very hard to get rid of that parent ego. And I think you're right. At some point, it's hard to see your kid struggle, but I think there's another level that it's like you want everybody to see your kid and think how awesome yours is,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like, by an extension, that means how great you are. And
Right.
it's like, oh, my kid would love to be getting recruit, letters and calls from Big Ten schools. And it would be a great thing to have happen. It really would. Everybody thinks that, but only if you get it. And whenever your kid misses out on that stuff, it's hard. And it all bubbles up. I think a lot of it bubbles up during a game a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times.
For sure. For sure. So like you said, when things get hard, pressure builds up, things burst, and sometimes it bursts for the better, like, hey, kid gets put in a pressure situation and it bursts, and boom, he becomes such a better player because of it. And sometimes it bursts and it turns into the biggest negative in the world because they weren't expecting that pressure. And parent couldn't live up to it. Player couldn't live up to it no matter what it was. Pressure burst pipes, and sometimes it's a pipe that needs to go, and sometimes it's a pipe that needs to stay, and it ruins something. But I think you kind of hit it on the head that ego is becoming more and more prevalent with today's kids, that parents are kind of living through their kids' success or wanting to be part of their kids' success. I don't think it's, by anything, selfish or anything like that, but they see, hey, he's getting talked to by these schools, or he's ranked this by this publication. Well, I can pay $50 to get my kid ranked, on that publication. So
Yeah.
let's be real. And um, I think there's just too many times, now that parents try to instill themselves into the process where they should take themselves out of the process, and sit back and let the kid go through what he's going to go through.
Yeah. And so from that perspective, from your perspective of being the AAU director and the coach, coming into these games, we're talking a little bit about what parents do wrong, but what do parents need to do? Like going to these games, what do you think that they
Be a fan.
what do they need? Yeah, what do they need to be?
Simple as that. Be a fan. Like, sit back, enjoy it. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. You know, cheer for your son regardless. He's out there trying his hardest. He's going to have great games. He's going to have bad games. He's going to have some okay games. That's everybody. That's the highest level of basketball player too. The pros, they have great games. They have bad games. They have in-between games. But I think that's what parents need to focus on, is be the parent first. Be there for support. You're not there to change anything. You're there just to support what they are doing. They have to live it.
That's
They have to go through it. Let them do it.
that's some hard advice, but it's good. It's great advice. It's hard though. It's really hard. Even, I mean, just from having two kids that go through and play some basketball, it's hard to do. It's something you have to be very intentional not to do
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. Yeah. So what do you have for high school coaches? You're running a different type of program. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same game. It's maybe a little different, but what advice do you have for high school coaches being okay with the AAU game?
Um, I think most of them are good with us. There's a couple that they they don't mind us, but they don't love us. They think it's unorganized, or all the negatives you hear about
Yeah.
AAU. It's different. It's more college driven. The game is faster. You get shots faster. You can't stall. I mean, you can, but it doesn't happen in
Yeah.
AAU.
It's not going to,
So
yeah.
um, it's bigger, it's faster, it's stronger across the board. Yes, is it a little bit more unorganized on the court at times? Sure, you can say that, but okay, I can tell you that high school basketball is too organized at times for what college and beyond is too. So, I think that it's a good combination. Hey, high school, you get practice 6 times a week. You got games multiple times a week. AAU, we get one, maybe two practices a week, and then we play, 4 to 6 games in a weekend. And our level for the most part is bigger, faster, stronger across the board, and more skilled. Every player. I don't get the chance to to guard, option 5 who can't dribble and who's a 6'2" post player. Those don't exist at our level. You know, it, so we don't really run into problems with high school coaches. I mean,
That's,
I think they for the most part they're very encouraging. I think we've put out a good enough product to see, and over time, to where coaches trust what we do and know that we're in it for the right reasons, and get the players better too. So
I think I think you get you get some leeway there because you've had some success and you're putting out the product and kids are coming back to you better. I think that, and I do think things have grown a little bit with the AU and the way people see it and how useful it is. I think for no other reason than to, like we said, if I like to say, if you're the best player in your gym, find a new gym, and you're
Mm-hmm.
making these kids go find competition. Your best players going to find these competition, which is it is what they really need.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great. It's my favorite part about it is I coach. So when I do mental coaching for a lot of basketball players, when we're going into the AU season, we're talking about a lot of the stuff I work on them with is, hey, you're going to face this competition. Be okay with failure, trying some new moves, trying some new things, stuff you're working on,
Mm-hmm.
and don't be afraid of failure. You have to go try stuff, and this to try it. If you can pull it off in an AAU game, you're going to be really good in
Mm-hmm.
your high school season. So I know I love it. I use it that stuff at all, or I use the fact that these kids are playing the AU, and we lean into that a little. So last question here, Coach. I always ask, what should I've asked you that I didn't? What did we not talk about that I should have?
I think you hit the main points, honestly. One thing that I will say that it gets brought up, and I don't necessarily think it's a parent thing because we've had it come from parents mostly, but I do think it's a high school thing. I do think it's an area, that you're surrounded by thing is understand the level that you're at. You know, when when we come in, for the first practice of the year, we get all the teams together, and the kids understand where they're at pretty much right away. They get, oh well, he's not as good as me, or everybody gets separates themselves at some point. And I think it takes parents a little bit longer to understand why this kid is separated from my son. And we kind of hit a little bit of that. Of it could be size, it could be athleticism, it could be skill, you know but that would be the one thing that I'd say that you have to be okay with is when you go in and you see talent, you have to appreciate talent. Hey, I'll just take two random kids, okay? Hayden Hoderman was a 2011 grad. He went to Western Michigan. Came from Bloomington Central Catholic, 6'3", probably 185, okay, and could shoot the living crap out of the ball. Okay, that's why he was recruited. Okay, he had 12 points at Duke as a freshman. Now they got blown out, but hey, it still puts it in
Yeah.
perspective. Okay, years later, Ethan Kaiser comes through and he's 6'7", almost a 7-foot wingspan. He jumps out of the gym. He shoots the ball at a really high clip. Yeah, they're both Division I players, but Ethan separates himself because he's 4 inches taller. He's way more athletic. He is way, more versatile in who he can guard, what he can do, where he can be on the floor. Those are all little things that make the gap between those two players huge. Where people only see, oh well, he doesn't shoot it as good as my son. Well, yeah, he can do a lot of other things too. So that would be the only other thing that I'd say that we bump into is being able to separate what your feelings are versus what actually is. In terms of potential. I can't make you bigger, faster, stronger, longer. All that stuff. To where certain kids just have a higher ceiling because they have all that stuff.
I think that that's good. And I mentioned it a little bit, like you said, understand the level you're at, and I think that's good because you have to be able to recognize and own your own abilities, your own deficiencies, and but I think that on some level you don't have to accept that it has to stay that way. Again,
Oh,
some things
facts.
genetic, some
Yeah.
things genetic. Sure, there's nothing you can do. I can't make your kid 6'7", right? But you can say, hey, I'm not where I want to be, and I can change this about it. So I think that, but before you can do that, you have to accept the fact that I'm not as good as I think I am. And
Right.
that's the, like you said, sometimes the kids are better at that. Well, the kids are always better at that, understanding that, than the parents are sometimes.
Oh.
It's just, that's just the way it goes. And we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about that too. So, great conversation, Coach. I love talking to you, and enjoy the rest. I know you got the fall league coming up. You got the you come in the AAU, come out of that in the summer, take a little bit of break, and put an AAU or a fall league together in there in Bloomington area, which is fantastic. I love that league, and just like the stuff you're doing and all the development work. And good luck to you. I love seeing your little basketball hoop in the background, raising up a little hooper there, that's how you start it. So, anything else, Coach?
Yeah, no, I think it was a great podcast. The one thing that I would say to all coaches out there, old, young, been in the game for a while, parents too, be truthful, all the time. Truth always wins out. A hard truth is better than a false promise. I say it to our guys all the time. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. Other people are going to tell you what you want to hear. What you want to hear isn't going to get you better. What you need to hear is going to get you better. And the other thing that I think that we could, that kind of stems into this about the mental makeup of things too, I think is the difference of generation. And what I mean by that is, me and you grew up in an era where you had to give respect to the coach. Okay, automatically because he's been there, he's done it, you give respect. We're in an era now, and I don't think it's better or worse, it's just different. You have to give that respect to the player in order for them to give it back to you, where it was demanded the opposite way when we were coming through. Like, we just had to give it to the coach because he was the guy. Okay, and I think coaches that can bring their players close are usually the ones that have a lot of success nowadays. You can call it a player's coach. You could call it, no, you're just a human being. You're a genuine human being that wants the best for them. You're trying to prove that you want the best for them, and then in turn, they buy into what you're saying. And I think that is kind of a good thing to kind of end on. And you can talk about it all you want, but like the difference of not better or worse, it's just a different way to approach, and that's how it is nowadays.
You are saying, I'm amazed at the number of podcast guests that I've had, coaches that are saying the exact same thing, and a lot about how the respect has changed. It's not that it's not there. It's just now that you have to go earn the respect that was automatically given. And if we want to look through, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but we've looked at in the last, 20 years or so, we've had some coaches that misplaced that respect, that I think is part of the reason why it's changed a little bit. And now you have to earn your respect a little bit. And honestly, I'll go ahead and say it. I think maybe it is a little bit better. It's going to take a little bit more work. I think it builds that bond a little bit more. It's not just assumed. And I think it's good. Like you said, makes you it's because you're a better human being. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. That's right. Okay. So I think that's a great point to end on. Loved the conversation, Coach. And we will talk to you again soon.
All right. I appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Educators and coaches, let's talk about professional development speakers for a moment. You know the drill. There's some good out there, but there's a lot of bad. I've been there and I've felt your frustration. And that's why I've got something different for you. Professional development that's actually engaging and genuinely useful. As a certified coach and a former educator, I understand the struggles our students and athletes face. The pandemic's impact is real, but so is the potential for positive change. Mental Mettle Coaching has 2 presentations designed to help you tackle the social emotional challenges that schools are dealing with. First is for teachers of all ages and is called Live Your 100. This transformative journey draws from my own experiences overcoming hardship. This seminar equips you with the tools to assess mental states, conquer challenges, and infuse positivity into classrooms and to teams. Learn not to survive, but actually thrive. And the second presentation is specifically for coaches, those that tend to sit in the back and draw up plays during presentations. This presentation is called Forging Mental Mettle in Athletes. It is not your typical PD. It's about actionable techniques. Empower your athletes to face adversity, develop growth mindsets, and break mental barriers that hold them back. I get it. The skepticism around PD is real, and that's why mental mettle coaching stands out. My presentations are rooted in real world struggles, delivering strategies that you can apply right away. If it all sounds good, contact me, Coach Tillman, or send my information to your administration. Let them know that you want to see professional development that will actually make a difference. Welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast with a little breakdown on that interview with my guest, Gavin Sullivan of Mid Pro Academy. And I love to say that athletics is a form of controlled adversity. It's one of the things I always preach. It's controlled in the sense that it's not really life or death. There's winners and losers, but it's controlled, but it's still adversity. Right? It's something we care about, something that we want, and something that honestly we ought to get something out of that adversity, not just put ourselves through tough things for no reason. Use that controlled adversity to have your child or your athletes or yourself get better. That's the goal. And I love so much of what Gavin said there, but one of the first things he said was, as parents now, we need to let our kid be hardened by adversity. All right. Don't shield them from adversity. Let them be in adverse situations. And AAU and these other programs in the summers are great at that. And the adversity comes in the form of really, really good competition. And that is useful if you use it correctly. You have to accept the fact that it is really good competition and that you're going to fail some, and that's okay. And it's something that you need to do as a parent or having one of your athletes, if you're the coach, go do this and just be like, have the understanding that it is going to be a tough situation. And especially from the parent perspective, let go of the ego. It's tough. So both my kids are both in college now, and they both did a little bit of AAU over the summers. And both times, my daughter, older, didn't play for mid-pro, but then my son, as you hear in the interview, Gavin talks about it quite a bit. And that's just because he and I have gotten to know each other, and it was a lane he felt like was a good example, which I agree. And the good example was the fact that he got into a situation where it was very hard. And my daughter felt the same thing. It's like we would get to these games. And I remember when we get started, I wanted them to face that adversity, but it didn't mean it was easy for me or fun for me to see them struggle. It's hard as a parent when you see your kids struggling, but you do have to get past the ego, because we know the ego is, we want them to win. We want them to succeed. We want everybody to come over afterwards and be like, oh, your kid is so good and your kid does this. Somehow we see that as a reflection of us being awesome, right? We need our kid to be awesome just so everybody knows how awesome we are. And it's all of us, right? It's a natural instinct, and you should want your kid to do well. You should want them to win, but then you should also be okay with the fact that they're struggling and you want them to struggle. So long as you have the right mentality about the struggle and about the failure. And there's a few things that I picked up from Gavin's program that he said and that he did that really echo some of the things that I talk about in my professional development speeches and my working with teachers, when working with educators, when working with individual athletes, some things that I say there. And the first one is there when as coaches, we love to use metaphors. And I think that it's a way to help people get out of their own head and see things from a different perspective. And the metaphor I love that he talked about was the one year he mentioned that he wanted the kids to start saying, I'm a pit bull, not a poodle. And you can't be a pit bull sometimes and a poodle sometimes. You need to have that intentional effort and intentional focus on what you wanted to be and what mindset you wanted. You needed to have, he said it was that year that they knew it was going to be tough. And they said, hey, you need to be unrelenting, never give up, be a pit bull, be a dog that really gets after it. And again, that's something that's similar to what I do with a lot of the athletes that I work with. I love the metaphor stuff. And I've had that conversation with athletes before. Just, it was organic, but I can remember asking a kid, he liked dogs, and we were talking, and I asked him what sort of dog are you when you're playing? And he was so honest. He said, hey, honestly, I feel like I'm a golden retriever. Everybody loves me. I'm loyal, but nobody's really very scared of me. And he knew he needed to get some more fierceness. And we talked about, what did he want to be? And I believe he wanted to become this like guard dog, German Shepherd type. And we worked on what that mentality would be and how to get there. So the fact that Gavin is doing that with an entire group of individuals, it's fantastic. That having an intentional mindset on what you want to be and how you want to be portrayed is a first step in actually getting there. Another thing that he said was talking about don't comparing, which is so hard in AAU because, like I said, the coaches are all there taking notes, comparing. You want your athlete, your kid to be recruited. It's nice to be noticed. You want that. So you naturally want to compare to others. Well, my kid shoots better than he does, or my daughter handles better than that point guard. But it's not about that. There's so many factors in a sport like basketball that it is next to impossible to compare one player to the next. There's so much to do. And as a person involved in it, either as the player, the coach, or the parent, you need to not do that either. One of my favorite quotes is from Teddy Roosevelt. He said, comparison is the thief of joy. If we compare, we do one of two things. We either look at somebody else and say, either I'm inferior to them or I'm superior to them. And neither one of those are good. They rob us from the joy. If we feel like we're inferior, that leaves us feeling useless. It's a negative, very negative feeling. And that spirals down, and that's no good. But if we look at somebody and say, well, I'm better than they are, that starts to get to that arrogance and leads us down a path where maybe they don't work as hard. And that robs our joy of what we could be. It's all about being able to see what you're able to. I love what he talked about, knowing the level you're at, knowing what you are, and being able to do that is really important. Knowing where you are, so you know how what you need to improve on. And don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to what you can do and what your kid can do and things like that. And the other one he said, he talks about, and again, we talked about it even being on the t-shirts, and you hear it all the time about trust the process, trust the process. Well, the process is uncomfortable. You need to know that. And I do think that AAU is a great example of the process because it's uncomfortable. Put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, right? Make it difficult. Be okay with it being difficult, and let that be something that helps you grow. So all those things are, the intentionality, not comparing to people, and trusting the process. Those are how you use adversity in your favor. He had mentioned that pressure bursts pipes. Well, it's good to put yourself and your kid through these pressure-filled situations because it really highlights some of the issues that need fixed and some of the holes in your game and things like that. Absolutely. But you have to have the right mindset going into those things and seeing those failures not as failures, but as knowledge and learning opportunities. And that's especially true if you're talking about a summer. Going into the summer, it should be going in and being a difficult situation so that you get better and helps you improve. I've seen a lot of kids coming out of the summer, and obviously you got to be working on skills. You got to be doing all these other things. But the one thing I know my son really, really grew from that is that not so much the exposure, but just the competition, having to play against tougher competition and having the right mindset when he did it. And it wasn't easy, right? It was difficult at times. It'd be nice to go in and just find out how good you are, but that doesn't happen for most people. You go into upper level and you find that it's difficult. And that's what we should want. We should want that adversity. Again, don't shield your kids from adversity. Be chasing adversity to get better and just support them in the process. That's the goal. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Mental Model Podcast. I have been your host, Coach Matt Tillman. I'm so thankful that you have been on. Keep sharing, keep liking, keep subscribing. I want this to reach as many people as possible and just, again, help kids and athletes just deal with that anxiety and some of the pressure that's starting to show up in a lot of sports. I want them to be able to help that. So you can do that. You can help me out by sharing and liking my stuff. I really appreciate it. So until next time, keep forging your metal. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Metal Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Metal Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Metal Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Metal Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.